My name is Nadine Gray and I am playing Sarah in A Plague of Innocence. Sarah is a nurse. She is very matter of fact. She's very strong in her opinions and about her background.
Hello, my name is Ellis J. Wells. I play Gerald, who is a teacher who's a little confused about his sexuality and place in life. And I also play the Primo, who is a dictator.
Hi, my name's Nicola Woolley. I'm playing Spider in Plague of Innocence. Spider is a young child who runs away from Sheffield to Eyam in search of both her mums. She's a bit of a lost child and quite innocent.
Hi, I'm Alex and I play Winston. Winston is a very kind of dedicated sort of person, falls in love with his teacher Gerald and just wants everything to be right and really fights for what he believes in.
Hi, my name is Izzy Smith and I play Julie in A Plague of Innocence. Julie works at a social club. She's a very maternal person without kids of her own and she just wants the best for everybody. She's someone that really cares for a world free to choose.
The sun is going down on England, land of a dead empire where the sun never set.
But now the empire's gone.
So Scotland, Ireland, Wales.
Out of the iron grip of England.
And now a lonely little land says goodbye to the day.
To the year.
To the century.
2000's creeping up.
Out of the east.
Out of the mists.
21st chance to get it right.
But not here yet. Quite yet. Clocks creeping towards midnight.
3 seconds to go.
Brief moments before the chimes and the world holds its breath.
Hearts beat in hope. In fear.
In love, in hate.
All feelings mingled in a timeless world.
Sliding us out of one age.
Into another.
A drowning people.
Waiting for the new dawn.
New dawn. Capital N, capital D.
When did that first crop up in the national vocabulary?
89?
Or 90.
Seemed like New Dawn had been here forever.
National Party, New Dawn. State Party, New Dawn. Party of Unification.
No opposition.
When did that happen?
But here it is, in the corner of the room on the PTV. That's what used to be the telly, the goggle box, the nightly choice of channels.
Not now. Now it's only the official view, the patriotic teleview, compulsory nightly viewing.
And here's the Primo of England proclaiming
New England reborn in the new dawn of a new century.
Rejoice!
Well, who dared not? Rejoicing was official.
And then the silence, born of those last 3 seconds, beating on the brink
of a new age.
And someone says, it's only a bad dream. Sick joke.
But no one listens, no one dares.
Hardly dare listen to your own thoughts these days.
So they stay silent. As the clock ticks, the seconds slide into the future.
And their eyes glaze over and they could be dreaming.
Soon sleep will come, sliding in from the sea to the sad, chalky cliffs.
Exhausted fields.
Stunned cities.
Stained archeries of concrete.
Rising moorlands.
Bleach bones of rock and crag.
Sleep.
To the people.
The chalky, exhausted, stunned and stained people.
Dreaming.
In the heart of England, a village.
Deserted place of low stone walls.
Doors off the hinges.
Windows open to the windy skies.
Name of Eyam.
Place not far from Sheffield.
But could be a million miles from anywhere these days.
These days of sealed off cities.
Soldiers on the streets. And then the wilderness. Wildness.
The crumbling places in between the cities.
The places no one goes to.
Places like Eyam.
But here in Eyam, this night at the end of the year,
4 people crouched and dreaming, clutched in the cold heart of England.
In the corner of the hill, 2 men. Gerald.
Winston.
In the corner of a stone wall. Spider.
In the corner by a gravestone. Sarah.
And some way off, a 5th, gazing at the stars, her eyes splintered with the light of the night.
They stare, they do not see.
And a trickle down her cheek. Could be a tear.
But it's not. It's red. And she dreams the final dream of the dead.
But in their separate places, 4 living hearts spin out the last few seconds of a dying year.
In dreams. Sarah.
Spider.
Winston.
Gerald.
On a raft of dreaming, floating them away from the present night, back down the years that led them to Eam.
Past the daft dreams first, the dreams like a merry-go-round.
Like the dream where my dad's dressed up as Mickey Mouse with a carving knife.
And he's chasing the headmaster through a field.
And I'm charging the whole school 10 pence per head to come and get a good view.
Or the dream where I'm stood in the high street, everyone looking, and I've only got my vest on.
Or the dream you never tell, where you're kissing your best friend and you're liking it, and you wake up and you wish you could tell.
Or the dreams where you're flying and free.
Or the dreams where you're frightened and falling.
Or the dreams of the dead and you're crying.
For Mum.
And Dad.
Down the end of a tunnel and you can't reach them.
For Grandad, and you're on his shoulders.
But he's got blood coming out of his mouth.
And the dreams of a big house, everyone I ever knew in it.
But the top room's not built.
Or just a flight of stairs, up and up, then a gap to the sky.
And we're all climbing the stairs to the gap.
And I'm shouting, don't!
But no one listens.
Eyes glazed over, up the dusty treads.
To the gap.
Then the last tread.
Feet at the brink, don't!
Falling!
Screaming.
The Primo of England is not dreaming. The Primo of England sits in a car sliding through the night.
With its bright accompaniment of motorcycle escort.
It's army armoured vehicles.
The sky dissected by the helicopter blades.
The searchlights, seeking out the signs of life that might betray a threat.
But there's no threat in the English countryside to the Primo's cavalcade, the metal parade from south to north.
The countryside's a wide tangle of dead trees, deserted towns and villages, places where no one's left to dream.
And the Primo passes to Eam.
For the Primo is going to Eam.
The Primo has purpose in Eam.
This night at the end of the century.
Spider had heard the rumours.
Spider, 16, short and cropped, kitted out in red and purple scraps.
Spider, name she'd chosen for herself. Why not? Did everything else for herself. Out here in the ragged hills with the other kids.
Kid gangs, away from the cities, run away to nothing.
Except the ruined towns, rich pickings of rusty cans or sometimes dead bodies.
She'd heard the rumours.
Primo men sniffing round this way.
What for?
Primo coming here maybe.
Why's that?
Dunno. But a big build-up of Primo men round Eam.
Why Eam?
Dunno. But big build-up of gun gang blokes too.
Winston had heard the rumours too.
Winston, late 20s, bit of a beanpole.
Sort of chap you'd say, yo, don't hang around the street corners, dog will take you for a lamppost.
Told Gerald earlier that night. Heard what they're saying. Primo's men around Eam.
Gerald, 40-ish, going to pot a bit.
Type of chap who'd say, it's just the beer. I'll take up jogging, be slim and sexy this time next year.
But he never did. Gerald says, Eam. Then why the hell head there, angry at Winston, demanding that they run another way?
For they are on the run. Two men, thin uniforms.
Well, not really uniforms. Uniforms are smart. Uniforms are dignified. Even a copper's uniform that's saggy serge bum, that's a uniform.
Not these. Thin cotton, dirty green, number printed on the sleeve, bright red patch above the heart.
3 letters in black.
HIV.
Run towards Eam, where the Primo's men's there. Gerald wasn't liking that.
But Winston knows, remembers the good advice from friends, back from the days before the Primo. Remember, when the cops are out to get you, the safest place to be is right outside the cop shop.
So we'll go to Eam.
Sound of dogs in the valley.
And they run,
Legging it across the moors,
tearing their flesh.
on the bare bones of the limestone.
Sarah had heard the rumours, but nothing surprised her these days.
Sarah, mid-40s, spare in body, ebony polished face. Eyes of rising anger as she'd sat at home that day waiting for this new age.
Watching the Primo on the screen.
England had risen again.
And the Primo promises.
The new dawn we've been waiting for, tomorrow.
And the name of Eam is on the Primo's lips.
Eam, a place in the heart of the land.
Why Eam?
What could Eam do for England?
What could England do for itself?
Once England had a world to organise, the empire, colonies, all gone.
Now it had shrunk to a stained tablecloth, a rat run on the edge of Europe, a bitter, shriveled apple.
Why Eam?
The Primo knew. We still have an Eam, an example of our great tradition of self-sacrifice.
Sarah spat at the screen, remembering the days when you could turn the bloody thing off. Not now,
Now new dawn.
announced itself.
And there you sat.
So she spat, hoping they'd not invented a spit detector.
And on to the PTV.
The patriotic pap, as some would say, if any dared to say.
Onto the PTV, nightly, insistently, compulsorily.
The story of Eam.
Julie knew Eam.
Julie, late 30s, tall, strong-featured, auburn hair streaked with grey, had been to Eam often.
In the times when people packed sandwiches and cans of Coke and picnicked in the green and pleasant parts, and taken the kids from the club where she worked, piled into the beat-up van, up and over the hills to the little stone village with its tourist knickknacks, backpack walkers.
Earnest teachers with their school parties, all telling each other the old story.
The story of Eam.
Julie with her maps and books, pointing out the houses where people had died.
How long ago, miss? How, miss?
Back in 1600 and something, when they had the plague.
What sort of plague, miss?
Bubonic plague. It came with fleas from rats. It came to Eam.
Curious children standing on the graves of the long dead of Eam, asking,
Will the plague still be down there?
scaring themselves.
Ring a roses.
You've got it.
She's got it.
And inevitably,
Will I get AIDS, miss?
And Julie,
urgent, insistent,
This time it's not a plague.
and young voices.
anxious, angry.
It's what the Primo calls it.
On the PTV,
The Primo.
talking of history.
Of a village once in the green places of Derbyshire when an old plague came and the people started dying and the Montpassants spoke out.
Montpasson, man of the cloth, man of the church, preacher from the pulpit. Montpasson, 3 centuries ago, speaking Sunday sermon wisdom, saying to the people of Eam,
The plague has visited. Some of you have died here, and more of you will do so. We have all been touched by plague. We are all potential carriers.
and panic spreads through Eam.
Run from it.
Run from the plague!
But Montpasson says,
No, the right, the good, the godly way is not to run. That way the plague will spread. The right, the good, the godly way is to stay, to draw a line around Eam, to cut ourselves off, to sacrifice ourselves if needs be, to save the rest of England from this plague, to do it willingly, for God, for England.
And they stayed,
and they died.
and they became famous. And centuries later, the school parties went.
And Julie, with her mob of girls from the club, Julie facing the inevitable question, saying,
AIDS is not like this. It's easier to catch a cold.
The Primo never used the words HIV and AIDS. The word the Primo used was,
Plague.
and used the history of Eam and its dead to say,
Here is the English spirit at its best, the spirit of self-sacrifice. Let's learn from this. Let's follow their example. Let's see that all potential carriers of plague remain contained.
cut off.
Liar.
Said Sarah, watching the spittle drip down the Primo's glass face.
Liar!
And the great choir sang, When the
the
plague
plague
comes to
comes to
Eam,
Good
Montpasson, man of God, said the hand of death has touched us all, so let us freely sacrifice our liberty.
And so Sarah said,
Liar!
she knew, she was a nurse,
Spat again.
saying,
That's for me, ma'am. Coming from the Caribbean, all that time ago, shivering down the gangplank to do your dirty work.
Thought of a man on the poster, man with a big cigar and a name of Winston, who'd said to her mother,
To England! There's freedom in England.
And she laughs at herself, remembers her son, how she called him the same Winston.
but that was before she'd known the real England, before England showed its real face.
Face on the screen, face with a scream.
Beneath the bland remarks, voice that barks.
Beneath the softness, voice that's forced.
All the bitterness of a dead land into the word,
Plague. This is England.
on the brink of its 21st chance to get it right.
And on that night, on the edge of a new century, on the edge of Eam, lay Julie.
Eyes glazing over, drifting into dreaming.
Spider holding her, talking, anything to hold the mind, halt the drift, tucking gun gangs and chocolate. Gun gangs. I'll tell you about the gun gangs. Blokes with guns. Don't like the Primo. Live out here in the kid gangs. Kill the Primo's men when there's battles. Big battle at Eam tonight. Get some chocolate. Often get chocolate from the dead after the battle.
Going to Eam for guns and chocolate.
Julie looks up at a stub of a girl, tries to remember a child who'd cried.
Spider never cries now.
But once she had, Julie remembered, 9 years back, a child...
Not called Spider then.
...crying.
Where's my mumses?
Spider's mumses, Kath and Margaret, saying to a
You'll
child,
be safe here.
We'll be together again soon.
We promise.
unable to explain where they had to go.
2 women with a child, no visible father, officially noted, action to be taken.
Kath and Margaret at Sarah's door. They'd come to her once before,
Best midwife in Yorkshire.
some women said.
She delivered the child. She stayed a friend. They'd come to her once again.
You'll look after her, won't you? If anything happens.
What could happen?
Anything.
Kath knew. Came from one of those places in the world where people disappeared. And even here in England, mid-80s, well,
Things could.
Did.
happen.
Sarah at that time, still believing the best of England. Yes, she'd always helped, not imagining the time when Kath and Margaret...
What?
Went.
Ran off.
Vanished,
Where's my mumses?
asked the child.
But Sarah didn't know. Late 80s now and people disappearing daily.
The child still asking where they'd gone. Why had it been so long?
Sarah silent as the official response.
Whereabouts unknown.
Then the time when she too had gone.
All of 7 years old.
Slipped off one night away from Sheffield, just a note.
Gone to look for the mumses.
Spider off to the kid gangs. Off to the shattered countryside.
But still looking, still hoping to find 2 women whose faces have faded from memory.
But this was a time of forgetting. England, late 80s. Forgetting was safer.
Winston trying to forget he'd ever danced all night at discotheques, ever played the classical guitar, ever studied for exams. Why bother now?
Just an HIV.
A number in a tatty uniform running for his life.
But he did remember Sarah, his mum, with her cool black hands when he scuffed himself at games.
Do they still have games at school?
Do they still have school?
And then the day when Sarah's cool was turned into heat and hurting.
Gay? What's that, eh? You're telling me my son's that?
When was that?
Late 80s?
Before the decrees.
What have you been doing?
Been doing nothing, ma'am. What do you think I've been doing?
Sarah not saying.
Why are you not saying?
She doesn't want her son to die.
Done nothing to die of, ma'am.
Being
She hated to use the word. It tasted like vinegar on her tongue.
gay.
It's not a death sentence, ma'am.
Well, what you do.
Do what? What do I do? What do you imagine I do? Say it.
Another word she was afraid to say.
Sex. You mean sex?
It wasn't a banned word. She knew the word was allowed. Why was she afraid to use it?
Ma'am, I've never had sex. Not yet, but I will.
She wanted him to live.
Sex and death, ma'am, they're not the same. They're different words, different things.
But all the same, her head, her heart hurts thinking of the sex she didn't want to think of.
And ma'am, gay's not just sex. Gay's what I am. Not a fad or fashion phase. It's in my bones, my being. It's the whole thing I am, all the connected parts of me.
Sarah looked an inward look, like she was dreaming. Dreaming of the time, perhaps, when she'd be going to Eam on a frosty, bright star night, coming up to a new age.
Going to Eam.
With a vaccine wrapped gently in an old scarf.
Vaccine, substance used for inoculation against disease.
Sarah's going to save lives. Lives, the Primo said.
Could not be saved.
Primo on the PTV, personal message to the nation.
There is no vaccine against HIV. No vaccine means quarantine.
And the great choir sang,
Good Montpesson.
and compulsory testing began,
All citizens to report to,
etc.
And identity cards were issued.
all citizens required to,
etc.
When was that?
Where did that begin?
Who was to know?
How to ask?
questions were not to be asked.
Questions were not allowed.
Will I get AIDS, miss?
9 years since picnics in Eam with a party of girls from the club.
Little Spider amongst them, though not called Spider then.
And the dancing on the graves and the questions.
Will I get AIDS, miss?
Julie explaining again.
You can't get it from the graves, or touching, or sneezing.
A tissue, we all fall down.
And then the first decree.
For the protection of family life, for real families, for legitimate families, which went.
A family is a man and a woman and their offspring bonded together by God and the state. To promote any other as proper or acceptable is now not allowed.
And Spider saying at the club,
Little 7-year-old who did not know God personally, did not know what the state was.
asking,
But my family's my mum's.
And Julie saying,
yes, that's right. Kath and Margaret, they're your family.
And then the letter.
Unfit person to be responsible for young people. Licence to work withdrawn.
Why you got to leave the club, miss?
How could she say? How do you tell a 7-year-old that somewhere in London, someone has said you cannot speak of certain forms of love?
As far as we're concerned, certain forms of love are invisible.
banned,
Illegal.
illegitimate.
She knew it was a lie.
She told the truth.
She lost her job.
Gerald suggested a course of action.
Gerald, good old pal from university.
Julie felt comfortable with him. Said once,
You're like a big old cosy old sofa.
Gerald wasn't sure he liked being called a sofa.
But was a bit too well padded out these days.
It was the beer.
Well, what did he suggest?
We'd better get married.
Julie wasn't out to get married.
But then the interview for a new job.
Single woman?
Tricky this.
Says here you lost your last job.
Through promoting.
The truth?
Sorry, the official recommendation's here.
Not suitable for work amongst the young.
And so a new word floated down from Whitehall, entered the hearts, the minds of the English.
Promoter.
Definition.
To promote.
To encourage.
The growth of.
Development of.
Julie had not promoted anything, encouraged anyone. She'd simply said that if two people loved each other...
But love was becoming a dangerous word. Love was being replaced by new words.
Promoter.
Potential.
And single women on their own.
Or women not on their own, women together with each other. Kath and Margaret, for example.
Were left exposed.
So Julie agreed with Gerald.
She'd better hide.
In a marriage.
A pretend marriage.
A man and a woman.
All pretense.
But a marriage. Smiled on.
By the state. Perhaps they'd be safer now.
For a while.
And all the while, the decrees.
More and more floating down from the sky.
Like snow, like sleep.
Potential.
And that day, some years later.
Gerald at the door, bags in hand.
I'm a potential now. I'm an HIV.
And it wasn't to do with the sex.
Gerald never had sex.
It was to do with something he'd said.
And the waiting van to the train to the destination decided for him.
When and how did HIV stop being something specific?
When it all began, HIV was a virus, a medical term, something you got, something that could
But not necessarily.
lead to AIDS. HIV, something transmitted from body to body,
Sexual intercourse in all its variety.
from blood to blood,
Hypodermics in all their many uses and abuses.
from adult to child.
A new contamination of mother's milk along with pesticides.
Once there were carriers of HIV.
Once there were particular groups at risk.
Potential victims of HIV
So how?
And when?
Did victim
become villain
How did potential enemy of the family
Of the state.
of the primo,
Become potential carrier.
Of HIV.
Of AIDS.
of plague.
potential
A word for anyone who didn't fit in.
No, said the government.
That was when there was still a government. Just before there was only the primo.
No, the tests are medically based.
But who had access to the results?
Not Sarah, working now on the isolation wing of a local hospital, caring for young men not unlike Winston.
Not Winston, working now in the isolated group of local activists.
Not Gerald and Julie, isolated.
In a pretend marriage.
But there it was. Compulsory testing. Results.
Classified information.
And the disappearances started.
First in the hospitals.
In the prisons.
Workplace.
School.
Home place.
And the popular phrases seeped into the language like a leaky sewer.
You're nothing but HIV.
Stop talking like an HIV.
There's an HIV if ever there was.
Who's a naughty little HIV then?
Then
Restricted movement for potential carriers.
Compulsory testing for all potential carriers.
And a whole new category of persons.
Potentials.
All potentials to report to.
All potentials declared that.
All potentials to prepare to.
Root them out like the trees.
No trees now. Just stunted stumps poked out of the poisoned land.
Gerald had known these parts in his youth. Going for a ramble, they called it. Keeping open the tracks.
Not now. A moonscape now. Eam coming up in the night.
Gerald.
Winston.
Breathing, rasping.
Feet bleeding.
No trees, no grass for cover, for safety.
Softness all gone.
Chemicals leaking into the body of England.
That was a plague. A real one. But no one was blamed. There were no villains.
A byproduct, said the ministry. An unfortunate byproduct of progress.
Sad.
But inevitable. Nothing is inevitable, Gerald had said one day in class.
Winston, attentive pupil, ears and eyes attentive to favourite teacher.
The only thing that is inevitable is death. And even then, most deaths happen too soon, too quickly, too painfully, through starvation, war, disease, all avoidable things.
Disease like AIDS, sir?
Dangerous ground now, standing on a landmine, 1 foot on the government demand for...
The teaching of diseases within curriculum-designed lessons on sex.
The other foot on the government decree that...
No promotion of homosexuality is acceptable.
Yes, like AIDS. It's easier to catch a cold, you know, than AIDS.
Snigger at the back. Yeah, if you keep away from the quiz.
Gaze.
Silence in the class.
Winston holding his breath.
Gerald had said it. Not a very shocking word, but was it too positive? Had he overstepped the mark? Should he have said...
Yes, pervert, sinner.
Was that in the mind of that someone, that minister, official advisor who'd woken up one day and suggested...
It was best not to be positive about people who were bound to be inevitably antibody positive.
All right, here it is.
Gerald sweating.
Did they have microphones in the classroom?
No, that came in the early 90s.
Here it is. Gay and HIV are two separate things. One is a medical condition of the body. The other is something that's perfectly...
Then stopping. Dare he?
Rows of faces waiting for him to say...
Natural. Nothing to do with disease.
But they get it. Queers get it.
And so do others.
But how do they get it?
Well...
Gerald frightened now.
Why should a teacher have to be frightened of telling the truth? What sort of education is that?
Trying to head them off.
Well, here's how you don't get it. Not by a handshake or a sneeze or a cough or a kiss.
Anger in the faces at the desk. Was he afraid to say?
Anxious Winston willing the truth out of him.
Anger in Gerald's voice forcing the words blood, semen.
How? How? Demand to know.
But how to speak of acts between two people when certain of those acts, certain of those people were being wiped off the map, forbidden. Deep breath. Like when two men who love each other...
Winston hearing the words for the first time ever. Two men who love each other, saying in his heart, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
But... For example...
He'd said the next day when the subject inevitably came up again.
For example, in Africa, it's mainly heterosexuals who contract the disease, not gays. And evidence suggests it came to us from Africa.
Winston leaping to his feet, no thanks in his eyes now, anger in his eyes now. You're about to say?
Say what, Winston?
Winston had heard the jeers, the taunts, not the ones about queers, those were to come when he'd come out, but the ones about the blacks. Blame the blacks as usual. Something new to load on the blacks. You saying that, sir? You saying let the gays off the hook and hang the blacks off it?
No. Gerald was not saying that. Gerald was saying that there was no one to blame except those who refused to help. Don't blame the starving of the world, blame the hoarders of food. Don't blame the dead of the wars, blame the starters of the wars. Don't blame the victims of disease, blame the governments, the gutter press, the preachers, the teachers of hate who turn the victims into the villains.
There were microphones in the classrooms.
There were tears in Winston's eyes.
Gerald was in trouble up to his neck.
Winston was in love with Gerald.
Sarah knew now Accepted it now. Knew something else as well. Knew that the people isolated in the hospital wings, the ones with the virus,
HIV.
the ones with immune deficiency, were
AIDS.
not condemned inevitably to death.
A young man,
A person with AIDS saying,
I'm living with AIDS.
saying,
I watch football. I'm a Sheffield supporter. I like mashed bananas. I do crossword puzzles. I read detective novels. I sometimes write poetry, and I think I'm a potentially good writer. I also have AIDS. So what? Well, something, but there's more to me than that. I'm living with poetry and mashed bananas and crossword puzzles. I'm living with AIDS. That's all.
And there were vaccines, she'd heard. Rumours they were only for the privileged. She knew.
I know, ma'am, I know. Winston at the university, publishing pamphlets, spreading hope and knowledge.
Both things banned now.
And always the message, never, absolutely never, accept second-class humanity.
and then the official form, to be filled out by every household,
Accurately.
truthfully. New Dawn, Society of Total Truth.
Sarah.
Winston.
Staring at the form, demanding its answers.
Box C, sexuality.
All members of household, hetero, bi or homo, either gender.
Practicing abstinent regular.
Infrequent.
All information withheld.
Will be regarded with the utmost,
Etc.
And so filled in.
No choice.
New Dawn.
Society of no choice.
It began, it crept up slowly like a snake in the grass.
Searching the shopping precinct with his cold glass eyes.
Seeking its programmed information in plastic identities.
For getting into the match, the clubs, the cinemas.
More and more devices to watch, to listen.
A smooth snake.
Armed with the evidence of filled out forms.
Machines these days, some said, that could detect a lie in a printout.
That's progress for you.
When a hesitation in the handwriting can spell out.
Hidden secrets.
New Dawn.
Society of no secrets.
And Winston, gone.
To the place where Gerald had gone. To the Gladlands. Gladelands.
Said the Primo.
Happy lands to the north, where the plague carriers can live. Separate.
Apart.
And the choir sang.
Of Montpesson.
Of Eam.
Of sacrifice.
It's the Gladelands.
Set Vida one night knocking at Sarah's door.
One of her visits. Regular but constant over the years.
Spider slipping in from the kid gang countryside with the news of the new places.
Place where the Mumses might have gone.
Place where Winston might have gone. Hope in Sarah's heart. Where?
Starts near Eam. Gungang bloke had told Spider. Big stretch of land to the north, and the gate to the Gladelands is Eam.
She'd gone, stood at the edge of Eam.
Looked out over the desolation where sheep once grazed.
Where hawthorn and bramble once grew. And there, on the edge of Eam,
Spider standing one spring day.
With its watery melon of a sun facing a man in a tattered uniform.
Don't come over here, kiddo.
why not?
Bad place to be. Best run back. Where Primo's men with guns after me.
What for?
No time to tell. But give us some news. Give us some scraps of gossip. Are things beginning to change? Is there any hope?
Spider didn't know. Spider just wanted news of two women. Had he seen them?
Could have. So many people in the Gladelands, though. If she came back with food, perhaps he'd remember.
Desperate look of the starving, hopeful look of the hunted.
She'd be back. Bar of chocolate. Very precious. In the meantime.
Here's food.
Said Sarah.
And ask for Winston. And here's more. Here's the medicine. It's precious. It's vaccine. It's for the ones who are ill. Tell him that. Tell him there's more. I know where to get it.
Spider took the vaccine. Sheffield to Eam, weekly.
What you got, girlie?
Gun gang bloke.
Nothing.
What's that?
Chocolate.
You got vaccine?
No.
You get it, you give it to us.
Never seen it. Besides, vaccines for those who need it.
Gun gangs need it. Vaccine's worth a fortune. Use it to buy guns. Guns to fight Primo's men. That's the big, important thing.
Gun gang bloke gone.
Spider, with a secret smile. The secret wrapped in a silver foil. Vaccine. Kept safe for the men and women who needed it. Necessary stuff hidden in a bar of sweet stuff. Clever Spider.
Have you seen the vaccine?
Sarah's at work in the hospital wing. Privatised place now. Place only for the rich to come and be cured.
Yes, a cure. But there was one, but not for the poor.
Not for the Primo's enemies, just for the Primo's friends.
So she filched it. Hoped it would reach the ones who disappeared, the ones the Primo didn't need. No, she'd not seen the vaccine. And anyway, what vaccine? She wasn't supposed to know there was one. She was just a nurse. Nurses weren't supposed to know anything.
But they knew. They all knew, even though the Primo said on the video, Pat.
There is no vaccine. New dawn.
Society of official ignorance.
Don't let's die of it, ma'am.
Said Winston, the day before the men came with the van.
It's only ignorance kills. Only superstition kills.
And she laughed. Remembered Marlene all those years back at school.
Marlene, ruddy face and freckles, all of 11, propped up by a radiator with a bag of sherbet, saying,
How a baby can happen from a toilet seat.
How she believed it for a year, afraid to sit down when she went.
nearly killed herself, that did.
And they laughed.
Imagine the day when the Primo would say,
A baby can happen from a toilet seat.
Only ignorance kills, ma'am. Not love.
You love me? Gerald was blushing.
Winston was laughing. Yes, lots of people fall in love with their teacher.
Gerald was getting a bit hot and bothered. Yes, but not...
What?
Well, perhaps it was just a crush.
Why that? I was 14 years old. I knew I was gay. I fell in love with my teacher.
Well, how did you know? When did you know?
When I was about 7, I suppose.
7? You were having sex at 7?
I said gay. I never said sex.
Yes, but...
When did you know you were straight?
Well,
Didn't think about it?
well, no.
Didn't have to have sex to know about it?
Well, no.
Well then, damn it, don't doubt me and don't think I fancy you now. You can rest easy. You're safe with me. I won't threaten your precious masculinity.
Gerald had done his best at school, tried to be fair, lost his job for it.
Winston didn't care. A white liberal mister who'd lost a job. He lost friends who'd lost life, lost dignity, the right to be human, the right to speak out, the right to help each other.
And then the great silence.
just the adverts, soft focus on the telly.
Full spread in the papers, advising all the pretty boys and girls.
All white, all heterosexual, of course.
To be safe. Promiscuity promised to the chosen ones if they did it safely.
Then they'd not get what the queers, the blacks got.
Then nothing. No advertising.
Just the compulsory testing.
The government not even asking.
Have you ever?
Did you ever?
Just the test.
The HIV test.
The compulsory test.
Results classified.
HIV. Anyone who did anything to displease the state.
To displease the Primo.
That's what happens. When you deny people their desires, do that and the next on the list will be you. It had been.
Gerald hadn't been far down the list. And here they were, at the edge of the glade lands overlooking Eam,
Putting their arms around each other.
to ward off the cold,
An arrestable offence.
like dreaming.
Tell us your dreams.
Last night, Julie had had the summons.
October to December 1999. Surnames A to D will report for dream detection. State Search Centre, local area, Chesterfield. 9 a.m. Name and occupation?
No occupation. But what Julie wanted to say was, there's no work in the new dawn. England does not have jobless.
Julie sighed. Long-term trainee.
Tell us your dream last night.
New Dawn didn't care for dreams. There are machines that detect lies. Now they're applied to dreams.
If you lie, the screen will indicate the dream was wrong.
Danger. She wanted to murder her dream. Last night's dream of desires, forbidden fears and pleasures, pictures of the body of England, her body, free of the Primo, free to love and to say, free to imagine freedom.
Why are you hesitating?
Once she'd read of a child trapped under a car and a mother running to a vehicle and with a scream lifting it bodily, freeing the child, saving the child, something that wasn't supposed to happen.
Well,
So Julie screamed inside herself and lifted the dream she had and threw it into the vacant space at the back of her mind and lied.
well,
I dreamed
yes,
of white lace.
and?
The Queen was sitting at the end of my bed eating cucumber sandwiches.
And she was in white lace.
She was in turquoise with a tiara. The white lace was my wedding dress. She'd worn it at her coronation. She was lending it to me for my wedding.
So you dreamed of your wedding?
Of course.
Why was she sweating?
You're sweating.
It's hot in here.
When people lie, they sweat.
I'm not lying.
That was your dream?
Look at the machine.
Relief.
The screen didn't flicker.
She controlled her heart. She'd lied successfully.
Good. It's good to dream of the Queen, but it's not good to sweat so much.
Night sweat, Julie thought.
You've had the test again?
She'd had it.
A sure sign is night sweat.
No, it's not, Julie thought. Night sweat meant flu or bad ventilation. But she stopped. Dreams that were not of white lace or the Queen were taboo, like night sweat. Dangerous.
I'm putting you in for the test again.
But
No buts, unless you've got something to be afraid of.
No, nothing to be afraid of, except having dreams that were wrong and memories.
Goodbye, Julie. And remember,
Yes?
don't ever try to cheat the machine.
Then Spider didn't come again. Sarah alone again. New Year's Eve facing the PTV. Spitting, thinking, what can one woman do? Not too young. Not the right shade of angel blonde. Perhaps they were right. Perhaps this was the way history was meant to go. Who was she? Then a story her mother told her.
Her mother, big and strong from the warm islands, come to be a muck rubber for the other Winston, the Winston with a fat cigar who'd given her son a name and stolen her mother's life. Her mother telling a tale. Was it a dreamt up story? No, she'd seen pictures in books. When there were books and pictures.
An old woman somewhere. America, perhaps, a town called Alabama. Yes, saying no, refusing to stand in a bus.
When a white man wanted her seat.
Refused and sat. And something happened, a fire of hope, of anger, sweeping the land, a magic happening, stored up in people's hearts for ages, set loose by one old woman. Refusing, sitting.
In a place called Alabama. In a place called Sheffield, Sarah sat, thought.
I'll walk tonight to Eam. Take the vaccine myself. It's only a small thing, but something I can do. And she wrapped a batch of bottles in her mother's old worn scarf, went out of the door, went out of Sheffield, went out into history, to Eam.
Edge of the village now. Winston and Gerald. Sound of motorbikes down the valley. Sight of the sweeping searchlights.
Copter blades cutting the night. Nowhere else to run. Besides, there's still something to hope for.
What?
Believe in magic?
Oh, yes. There's been magic happening in England some time now. Thoughts magicked away. Dreams magicked away. Words, phrases, ways of thinking, all magicked away.
People magicked away. Magicked into things, into promoters, into potentials.
Into HIVs.
So why not something magical in Eam? Something new bursting on the world?
Door goes, windows shatter, men enter, scream.
HIV arrest!
Julie screaming.
You can't get HIV from dreams. HIV comes from blood and cum.
Where'd you get that crap? That sort of crap was banned years back. You got literature.
Flat smashed open.
Where are my test results?
Classified.
Don't you trust the Primo?
No. Sarah at Eam now crouched by an old grave, thinking of a little old woman in a bus.
Alabama. No power, but she said no.
And down below a village crawling with khaki, Sarah looked at them and whispered, no.
Primo not there to hear. Primo in car. Primo setting off to Eam.
Like a thief in the night. On its parallel track to the north, a train in the night. Windows painted over. A heaving bulk crammed with its own secret cargo. Inside, whispers.
Where are they taking us?
Some were up north, some were quiet.
Nice place, I've heard.
Yes, Gladelands.
Gladelands. Picture of merry England, oak leaf canopies.
Nice clean places, so they say.
Gladelands. New word. Government word. For disaster area, poisoned places. Places to send potentials.
Julie, crammed in with the rest like cattle, refusing to feed on false hope. We're a bunch of troublemakers to be dumped in a radioactive desert.
Nervy looks.
Land anxiety.
Shut up.
Why shut up now? At least we can use our words again. Words. We're being sent to a concentration camp.
Guns.
Glass shattering.
Trains careering into embankment.
Falling!
Screaming.
Nothing.
Chocolate. Spider is rifling some pockets. Dead bodies spilled out on the green bank. Wrecked trains down the slope. Wrecked bodies in the mud.
An owl hoots.
Spider hoots. Holds up the loot in triumph. Chocolate.
Julie heard it, voice in a dream.
Chocolate.
Tried to think, head numb, remembered what? Then out of the dream, a look of recognition, remembering.
Don't talk. You're hurt. I'll hold you. I'm Spider.
But not once. Once you were, what was your name?
Name Spider, told you.
But once, I know, the child with the mumses.
And Spider remembers too. This woman she holds, the miss. The one at the club, the one who comforted her. The one she had to comfort now.
But Julie had begun her drift downwards, inwards.
So Spider talked. Anything. Gun gangs, chocolate.
Over the ridge, out of the pitch night, towards the wreckage, the wrecked bodies, man with a gun.
Could be Primo's man.
No girlies, you're safe. I'm gun gang, going to Eam. But you stay here, girlies, big battle at Eam tonight. We'll see you all right. Gun gangs will make meat puddings of Primo's men tonight. You stay put, girlies.
Then gone.
Like Julie,
Gone.
deep within herself.
Gone. Far out to the edge of the universe, gazing at the stars, her eyes splintered with the light of the night.
In Spider's eyes, the long abandoned tears for the mumses, for Julie, for her own abandoned life.
Turning to anger tears. Eam. She'd go to Eam.
Upper bank, slippery with blood mud, thinking.
Whatever they plan tonight, Primo won't do it in secret. Spider'll see it. I'll be a witness. That's a power I have. My eyes, my mind, that's a bigger power than all their guns and speeches. I'll watch it, hold it close, and one day tell the world.
And so, on the edge of Eam, in their separate places, 4 people dream.
Winston, Gerald, Sarah, Spider.
And down in the village streets, a car slides in like a snake, a figure alights.
The Primo of England has arrived in Eam.
But no one in England knows. They're all asleep, dreaming.
Even the men in the uniform, the men with the guns, with the cameras, they could be sleeping with the same milky look of the dreamer.
Only the Primo, with his razor smile, seems waking in this new dawn.
The dawn arrives at midnight, suddenly, leaping up like a devil from hell over Eam.
Out of the arc lamps into the sky, a brighter dawn than ever seen, an artificial dawn, made for the cameras, made for tomorrow's PTV.
Made while England sleeps.
And the Primo speaks to the camera.
Of Montpesson, of past and present plagues, of quarantine, of blood and soil and sacrifice.
When politicians start talking of blood and soil, be on your guard.
It's your blood they're after, and your body they're going to put in the soil.
And it seems as if England has only one voice now. Voice of the Primo, promising perfection.
And the microphone echoes up the words to the hills.
Perfection.
And in their sleeping dreams, 4 people touch themselves.
Touch their own bodies, those things that lie behind the Primo's words.
The clean body of the nation, the uncorrupted body of the state, the pure body, the uncontaminated
Body, whispered Sarah. My body they mocked for its colour.
Winston's body, not allowed to show its love.
Spider's body, longing for the love of her mumses.
Gerald's body, hunted down for the thoughts in his head.
These are their dreams. And down in the Eames streets, the perfect lines of men, guns at the ready, protecting the Primo.
From what? Who is going to contradict now? Who is left to say no?
When the only person saying anything
Is the Primo. The Primo, in love with the camera, knowing the nation is stunned into silence.
A ferret with a rabbit by the neck. That was the Primo.
The Primo will ferret out from every corner, from every heart, the plague. The whisper of plague. The very idea of plague. The plague that is anyone who says no to the Primo.
But in the corner of the hill, the wall of the grave, 4 people dream.
And in their dreams, they know the barricade they have against the guns, the words,
The last.
The lonely.
The only barricade.
the body.
The primo is afraid of the body.
The primo and all the primos ever were and will be terrified of the body.
When there's nothing left to challenge with, when they think we are defeated, what do we do?
Do we go willingly into the gas chamber when they tell us?
Willingly into the glade lands of the future.
Because our bodies,
Our minds.
Our sex
Our race.
Our gender.
our desires,
do not fit with their idea of perfection.
Have we gone already when we accept their judgments of us?
When we mock each other and ourselves for lacking.
For being imperfect.
These are only dreams, remember. These four are still asleep defenseless, while down below are the guns and the words.
but
History can change on a but.
dreams have changed history.
And down in the village, the hair on a soldier's neck bristles.
It passes down the line. They're trained to sniff out danger, soldiers. Snuff it out with a gun.
For over the brow of the hill, out of the glade lands, into Eam,
1,000 bodies.
Walking together.
Naked. Defiant.
Holding each other.
towards the guns.
And with them,
Others rising like a night mist up from the soil.
Taking shapes, limbs, forms up, out of the buried time.
The dead. The anonymous dead of a past plague saying,
We believed the Montpesson, believed we had to sacrifice ourselves, and so we stayed, contained, cut off, cast out. We did it from the goodness of our hearts.
And Montpesson saying,
but that was centuries ago. We did not know. We were innocent in our ignorance. We did not have your knowledge. But you know, you have progress, science. You have no need to sacrifice yourselves. Others.
and all saying,
your ignorance is not innocence. Yours is the ignorance of those who use your science to destroy the body of the world and refuse your science to those who need help and healing.
And the primo is silent.
Silent the soldiers, as the naked and the dead advance down a hill, saying,
there is no right or wrong, good or bad in the human body.
Asking, why do you fear it, contort it, distort it, beat it, rape it?
Mock it, snigger at it, abuse it, condemn it, hide from it.
behind your bullets, your bombs, your laws, and your preachings.
Saying, there is no plague. There never was.
There are seemingly incurable diseases, and when they come our way, we cure them if we can. And if we cannot, then we care for the bodies of the dying.
We do not condemn, for once we start condemning, we condemn ourselves to ignorance, to fear.
To the glade lands and the guns, to the future primos and the preachers.
There are only two plagues, the plague of ignorance and the plague of innocence. Choose.
And in the arcing light, the unthinking guns raise themselves in their phallic glory, ready to penetrate flesh.
Except one, and a soldier remembers what it was once like to be touched without fear.
To touch without loathing.
And he lowers his gun for a moment
And a plague
of innocence
Descends.
On England,
For a moment.